Hey, welcome back to the Game Room. I'm stoked you're here because today we're taking a look at the entire Game Room space for the 2024 Game Room Tour. A lot has changed since last year's Game Room Tour, so if you want to take a look back and check out last year's Game Room Tour, I'll link it up top, but every other link for other videos is going to be shown to you like this, and when you hear links sound off, that means that you can find a link in the description to another video related to all of the various other things that are going on here in the Game Room. Alright, I want to start off by saying that everything that you're going to see here in this Game Room tour today was free. I basically paid nothing for all of the contents of this Game Room. That's all off the back of a lot of yard sales, thrift stores, pawn shops, all that good stuff. I basically started with 10 bucks and bought and sold my way up to everything that you see here today. So if you want to see how that all got started, I recently did a video series called Game Room 2. I'll link in the description below. That's a whole video series showing how I started a secondary game room with just $25 and built my way up to a pretty killer little second video game collection. So if you want to see how that process works, it'll be down in the description below. The game room space that I have down here is right around 250 square feet. That also includes a little half bathroom that takes out a little chunk of the overall space. And I basically built everything that you see in the game room from the ground up, starting with the custom concrete epoxy floors, right up to the ceiling with LED voice-controlled lights, the shelving, all that good stuff. And yes, I will link all of that in the description below. All right, let's crack into this with a little tour around the game room space, just to give you an idea of what the space sort of looks like in here. And it's a long, narrow room that's 26 feet by 11 feet. So it's the better part of 250 square feet. Got a long linear wall of shelves holding the bulk of my game collection along this side. Game room editing station for YouTube is sort of over in this corner, along with a small set of custom shelves for Game Boy games. And then down on this end is the Nintendo Nook. It houses everything from Super Nintendo all the way up to the Switch, alongside a ton of my handhelds and this little kind of standing arcade station. There's a bathroom in that little section which eats up a little bit of space in the game room, and some of the gaming literature like Nintendo Power magazines and strategy guides are housed over here. All right, we're going to start things off on the Nintendo Nook side of the game room. Kicking it off up here with the Nintendo DS. I have 104 games currently in the Nintendo DS collection. The DS side of the collection is definitely part that's been growing quite a lot, and anytime I find anything unique or interesting that I don't already have on the DS, it's absolutely a must pick up for the collection. The Nintendo 3DS is absolutely one of the fastest growing console libraries in my collection. We're currently sitting at 120 games. And since I recently got rid of the Vita in my collection, this library just continues to grow even more. The GameCube collection is constantly growing with a ton of new awesome additions to the collection lately. I've definitely been picking up some of my more expensive titles recently on this console, and yeah, whenever I find something new for the GameCube, it's absolutely a must-get for the collection. My Analog Pocket is probably one of the most exciting recent additions in the last year to the game room. This is an absolutely killer handheld console that not only plays everything from Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy games, it will also output in HDMI to your television and allow you to game capture. This is just an absolute all-around gem to have in anyone's collection. The Nintendo Wii is absolutely a console that I am not afraid to collect for. I know there's nothing glamorous about collecting from the Nintendo Wii, but the games are still relatively cheap for this console, and there are still a lot of really interesting subsets that you can collect for, whether that's finding all of the mature rated games that you can on the console or trying to pick up all of the light gun shooters. Yeah, this is an absolute all-around really fun console to collect for, way underrated, and definitely one of those libraries that in the next 5-10 years people will start to ask how you found your games so cheap. All right, let's back it up here to the Game Boy Advance section of the collection. All these cases were custom made out of Nintendo DS cases, and then I print the artwork and store the games inside the GBA cartridge slot. Such a fun little console to collect for, and yeah, I generally always pick up whatever I can find for this one. And I was 40 games short of an entire Wii U set before I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna collect the stuff I want to play. We're now down to a reasonable 82 games for the Nintendo Wii U, and still a really fun console to collect for, still one that I enjoy going back to and playing all the time, but definitely not one that I need to own games like Barbie and Monster High for. Alongside the Wii U, I've got my two new Nintendo 3DS consoles sitting on rose-colored gaming stands. These are a new addition to the game room this year, as well as that Legend of Zelda OLED Switch that is absolutely gorgeous to play on. Of course, the Nintendo Switch collection is at 116 games and still growing. A lot of really awesome titles, whether they're a mix of indie things or newer titles that are being put out, AAA titles. It doesn't matter, I collect them all. I love this console and absolutely adore picking up whatever I can find to add to my Nintendo Switch collection. Down on this end of the game room, I have a 40-inch Toshiba, kind of set up as a standing arcade zone. Underneath, I've got a bunch of classic consoles hooked up, as well as a Super Retron HD, which is awesome for playing both North American and European region Super Nintendo games. Nintendo Wii hooked up right around the side, so I can still play GameCube and Wii over on this end, and everything is hooked up to a switcher. And if you're curious about how I put this entire thing together, I'll absolutely link the video in the description below. It is a pretty awesome little setup, and one that I absolutely adore playing on. Over on this side of the Nintendo Nook is my N64 collection. We are going for a complete North American loose cart collection. If you want to see how I store all of my N64 loose carts, I will link that video in the description below, and you can check that out. I do have some boxes for the N64 as well. I mainly just pick up ones that interest me for display, ones that I had from my childhood, and yeah, whatever I can find at a reasonable price. These rose-colored gaming stands are also a new addition to the game room. I finally have a home for my handhelds, something that I absolutely did not have last year, and I'm really happy to have in the game room this year. I will link in the description my video reviewing these stands. They are fantastic. The Super Nintendo collection lives down here on the last 3 shelves. This part of the game room has absolutely exploded from last year, and we've managed to pick up some really, really solid titles for the Super Nintendo collection in the past year, and yeah, definitely love collecting for this console. The gaming literature section of the game room is one I love adding to, and you know, it's a really underrated thing to hunt for at pawn shops and thrift stores. You can find strategy guides and Nintendo powers if you really hunt and look for them, and they are awesome to just hang out, chill in the game room, and read. Definitely love beefing out this part of the collection any chance I get. Okay, headed right around to this side of the game room. We have my newest CRT addition to the game room. This one is a 32-inch Hitachi. It has a beautiful screen and the geometry is super straight. This is absolutely a killer addition to the game room comparative to what I had last year. It is still sitting on this 4-cube IKEA shelf that is divided up by milk crates cut in half and backed by 1/8 of an inch backer board with holes drilled through so that cable management can absolutely be completely tidied up. I have a brand new switcher in the game room this year with a copy of Final Fantasy Origins sitting on top, and this switcher is absolutely killer. It does a fantastic job. I will link it in the description below so that you can pick one up for yourself. I got it off of Amazon. The entire CRT setup is on caster wheels so that it can be pulled out and away from the wall if you want to get a little bit closer to the game, or if you're just looking to mess around a little with the cable management setup. in the back. Over here I have my 48-inch LG TV running Doom Eternal at the moment with a little bit of a different setup under here this year. A brand new with the thrift store price tag still on it. Toshiba, this one does DVDs and VHS. Haven't got that quite up and running yet, but should be an interesting addition to this side of the game room. PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One Scorpio Edition, along with my trusty red Wii outputting HDMI, a Wii U console, and of course my Fortnite Edition Switch. Everything on this side is on a new, trusty, reliable switcher, which does a great job swapping over signals anytime we're switching games. And, you know, my Xbox One is definitely the console that I put the most time in on, especially considering we do all of our TV streaming off of it, and a lot of gaming too. All right, this side of the game room houses everything Xbox and PlayStation, starting right up here in the top corner with the OG Xbox, probably one of the slowest growing collections in the entire game room, and just one that I don't really buy a lot of games for anymore. We do have some pretty good games in that collection though, and directly underneath it is also another one of the fastest growing collections in the game room. The Xbox 360 is a lot like the Wii in many ways. It's still pretty cheap to collect for, and the games are an absolute blast, probably even more so than the Wii in that way. The Xbox 360 library currently sits at 234 games and is the second biggest game collection that I have in the game room today. Up on the top shelf is the Xbox One collection. I do really enjoy collecting for this console, but the Switch tends to take priority when it comes to this generation of consoles, but I do still have a pretty decent little collection for the Xbox One. Alright, underneath that is the PlayStation 2 collection. A pretty decent little set. I am trying to root out the last of these greatest hits copies so that I can have an all black spine collection. I know that's a little bit vain, but a lot of game collectors do it, and I'm definitely one of them. I think I've got less than 10 of those left, but you know, this is where I love to play a lot of games like the Guitar Hero series of games. Love collecting for that and love playing those games, and we've added some pretty decent titles to the PlayStation 2 collection in the past year, and yeah, definitely a classic. Alright, the PS3 collection is divided into two halves, down here along the bottom, and then also right up here underneath PlayStation 1. Kind of a little bit misorganized, but here they are. I definitely usually collect for the Xbox 360 when possible for this generation, but we do still have a bunch of killer titles, along with some of my favorites like Valkyria Chronicles. This is a fantastic game on the PlayStation 3, one that is near and dear to my heart. And yeah, a lot of gems here on the PlayStation 3. All right, let's reset to the top shelf. Some console boxes up here. This is the console box for my OLED Switch, alongside a new console pickup, which is this special edition Pokemon Switch Lite console. Really happy to have added that one to the collection in the past year. And then just under that is the PlayStation 1 collection, one that's actually been growing quite a bit over the last year. This is not a set that I really had as a kid, and there are so many fantastic titles that live right here on the PS1, and so adding a lot of those higher end games on the PlayStation 1 in the past year has been an absolute blast. My small but mighty PlayStation 4 collection is right down here. It is probably one of the smallest, if not the smallest, collections in the game room, but I've absolutely been loving playing games like Simulacra on the PlayStation 4. This was an absolutely wild experience, along with from Wales Interactive, Who Pressed Mute on Uncle Marcus. These are some really cool full motion video games that I've been getting into on the PlayStation 4. And a quick nod to some of the video game related movies that I've picked up and added to the collection in the past year. Some really fantastic titles here that if you haven't had the chance to watch, give it a shot. However possible, find these titles, especially this not for resale title, a fantastic video game documentary for sure. These are some really fun movies that are all soaked in video games. So yeah, check them out however you can. I do have one more small set of shelves right up here in the corner. These are my Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, along with just kind of a random assortment of childhood nostalgia. I've definitely been picking up some pretty awesome titles on both the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Color in the past year. Some heavy hitters that I didn't really ever expect to have in the collection have just sort of been showing up locally. So I've been making some really neat additions to these two collections, and with the pickup of the Analog Pocket recently, these have become so much more fun to play on. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end to check out the 2024 Game Room Tour. I'm stoked that you popped by to take a look at how things have changed in the last year. If you enjoyed the Game Room Tour, please feel free to drop a like, a subscribe, a comment. All that stuff goes a long way into helping my channel grow. I so appreciate all the support, especially those of you who've been around since the beginning. Thank you so much. I am so stoked that you stopped by. I will absolutely catch you on the next one.